So consider, you can hear now, consider your own experience. Happy thoughts, sad thoughts, anxious thoughts, peaceful thoughts. And then there's a pause in thoughts where you're just sort of present with what you're experiencing. Compare that to being involved in all of the, self and all of your plans. And, instead of putting energy in the thinking, you bring the energy back into the observing. And I think it's a different, it's not that you're stopping the flow of things happening. I don't think that's what stilling means. You're not stopping stuff from happening, but you are not agitating it. So, sometimes I think of it in terms of, think of two experiences that are really similar. Walking through a market that's very busy. And in one of the times you're walking through it, you have your wallet and a list of things to buy. And the other one, you forgot your wallet at home. And so you just can't buy anything. There's nothing to do, but you're still walking through the market. But without any intention to buy anything. And the experience actually is, so it's busy, and then you start to observe different things. Instead of what I want from this place, just, wow, look at this and this and this. So there's still the same life happening, but your relationship is different. Your sense of ownership has been stilled. So when the desiring self is stilled, then there's happiness and peace in just what is. Because it's not about me anymore. I'm stilling the self-filter. So I'm not filtering all my experience through my sense of like what I like and dislike. So we're talking about the likes and dislikes, the aversion and attachment. That's the stilling. And then, life happens, and what's your experience of it? It's really different. It is happier. Because you don't want to get anything out of it. And why? Because you have what you need. You're alive, and that's enough. So there's just the joy of being. It's a simple joy. It doesn't need anything. Yeah. So yeah, Sankhara is like this volition. It's like, when we go through these stages of building a self, and then the self that wants, that has opinions. When that's stilled, life is still happening, but, it's not about me anymore. Which leads well into the topic. We don't want it to, following up this sort of a few questions from last week, which were about relationship and how you can be involved deeply in practice. Not practice as a hobby, but like practice as, I really want to purify my mind and live with an open heart and have time to be really deeply involved in a contemplative life. And have to answer to somebody. Have a commitment. And the different sides of experience that relationship brings up. Passion, expectation, disappointment, misunderstanding, conflict. And then all the joy and happiness and everything, all that too. But when we talk about working on a relationship, we're not usually talking about how to work with the joy. That doesn't need so much work. But the main question is, when we're talking about having a deep commitment to a spiritual life, is it compatible with a deep commitment to a worldly relationship? Can you have passion and can you have altruistic love and individual exclusive love? Can they work together? Now, the other thing I want to mention is that if you have a comment or something, because one of the things that was mentioned last week is wanting more time for people to say anything. So if you do have something come up, you don't have to wait till the end, because usually we only have a few minutes. You can ask something or write something, and Roy will let us know. So something I just recently read from Ram Dass, a teacher who died recently, last year I think it was, but someone was asking him in a retreat he was running about relationship, about personal relationship, and how to have love and a spiritual life at the same time. And he kept avoiding the question. We were like, talk about something else. And then he finally gave in. He said, if you really want to look at love from, like romantic love, he's talking about, we're not talking about metta here. We are, but we're talking about like relationship love. He said, if you really want to look at love from the spiritual side, you can make relationship your practice. But it is the hardest practice you will ever do. And we should find that reassuring, right? Because all of us like get into relationships often easily, but maintaining them with a sense of awareness is very difficult. When Roy was driving me to the bus afterwards, and he was giving me some accounts of people who, have all different sorts of ideas of relationships. And I also heard it seemed to be the theme of this week, because some of at the end of the year, my students in college give presentations, and someone was talking about dating. She's a college student, and she said like she knows so many people and they all are looking for love and they can't find it. How can it be that there are so many available people and, it's so hard to find somebody who's like compatible? Are we asking the right questions? And often, as someone who's trying to mature in our lives, we go initially as children, and emotionally, as children, we think often about what we need to get from our parents, from our friends, from our school, from our job, and then ultimately from our relationships. What I need from this relationship. And then the practice starts to then turn ourselves inside out a little bit and start to ask a different question. What qualities can I offer? What am I now give? So it starts to be a different question in the sense. It starts to be a different equation. And I'm not saying that now you've got it solved. I'm just saying that we need to ask certain questions. You know? And what qualities am I developing in myself that I can start to then share and develop with someone else? So it kind of comes to the question of what is intimacy? Now, what does intimacy mean? And what does it mean to be really intimate with somebody else? You know, there's this, when I mentioned to Roy about this topic, you know, you're going to talk about the first noble truth, dukkha. And in this one Buddhist teacher wrote about the Four Noble Truths of relationship. That the first one is relationships are uncomfortable. And that's a noble truth. Like, if it's real, it's going to be uncomfortable, right? It's going to expose you because of that sense of intimacy. And we can't talk about intimacy if you don't also consider what it means to be vulnerable. Because if you're not exposed, it's not intimate. You know, intimate means that you've let down some defenses and you are kind of a little bit raw and vulnerable in this situation, right? That's intimacy. That you're not just knowing sort of the details of your life, but you're allowing some of the imperfections to be exposed. When we are in the world, very much we want to present what's good about us, right? I mean, that's how we succeed in jobs and school and stuff, like from success to success. But relationship, again, is a different sort of equation. Eventually you get to a place where actually what you have to reveal is where you failed. Where you failed, like what's wrong with you. As otherwise you're only getting that half of the picture. Yeah. So so you can only do that though, right? When you do accept that first noble truth of relationship, right? That it's going to be uncomfortable, and that's kind of like from there we can proceed. We can proceed if we accept that much of relationship with somebody else is going to be uncomfortable or difficult. That doesn't mean it all is. It just means that that's a truth that's unavoidable, like the truth of dukkha. It's unavoidable to be alive is to experience pain and difficulty, right? So the second noble truth of relationship that was expressed here was that difficulty, okay? That difficulty comes from the struggle to make it comfortable. That we want to fix it. And we often think that if the other person can change, it'll be more comfortable. Right? So we try to solve that discomfort. You know, we try to solve it by working on it. Now, again, I'm not saying that there's not work to do in a relationship, but I'm just going through these Four Noble Truths of relationship that, you know, relationships have dukkha, they're difficult. There's difficulty. Okay. There's discomfort. And the discomfort often comes from trying to change yourself and the other person in a way to solve that discomfort, to end that discomfort, that, you know, difficulty. So the third noble truth of relationship then means that if we can somehow accept ourselves and others as imperfect, as imperfect. So it's ending, as with the third noble truth, the way to find nirodha, the way to end desire, that there's an end to desire, and you end the cause of desire. Right? So if we want to solve the discomfort, it's not by changing, but perhaps accepting that she is who she is, and he is who he is, and I am who I am. Jack Engler, about 25 years ago, he was a Buddhist psychologist, and he famously wrote, you have to have a self in order to let go of self. You have to have a self in order to let go of self. So to let go of self. Okay. So in order to have a healthy relationship where you can let go of some of your issues, you actually have to have a pretty healthy self first. You can't go from sort of unhealthy self, and then two unhealthy selves coming together are going to make a better whole. No, they're going to be two unhealthy selves. Like, become better by changing each other. That's problematic. So there's a sort of difference to recognize between having needs and being needy. Having needs are very legitimate, in a worldly sense. Like, we need respect, we need honor, we need trust, we need, space. All right, there's all sorts of things that I may need individually that like somebody else doesn't need, things that you bring into it, and those are a basis for communication. But neediness is something else, and that comes from something that, if you don't have that healthy self, then you're hoping the other person will fill it, and the neediness is that hole that will never be filled. Okay, so to differentiate between having legitimate needs and having neediness, being needy, is the difference between having a sort of spiritual life that is yours and hoping that the other person will somehow complete you. Your completion can only rely on yourself. And when you fully accept that responsibility, then you take a huge burden off of the other person. They're not there to complete you, right? That's not their job. And your job is not to complete them. Right? That's neediness. Now, in a relationship, having needs is fine, right? But you can have those needs knowing that ultimate to be a full person is not dependent on anyone else. And with that sense, that means you need to have a mature spiritual life and a mature sense of self before you can have a mature relationship. Because otherwise we'll be hoping that maybe they'll help me grow up, and they're not your guru. So then the fourth noble truth of relationships is that sometimes I hear a beep and I wonder if there's a question. But maybe I'm just going nuts and I'm hearing things. But the fourth noble truth is that it's possible to work with all of this skillfully. It's possible to navigate all of this skillfully, meaning that there's a path to do this. And so the spiritual path that you take on is at the same time a relationship path. I mean, there are pretty much, you could say very clearly, there are, in the same way that there are four noble truths of relationship, there are also four qualities of an enlightened relationship, four supreme qualities of an enlightened relationship. And they have to do with, metta and karuna, mudita and upekkha, with loving kindness and compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity or acceptance. And when you think about those qualities are qualities of a vibrant and moving relationship. Now, think about it. How can you be really close to someone without wanting them to be happy? Metta. And accepting fully that their happiness is, theirs. It's theirs, it's not yours. Compassion, that really fully recognizing their pain. That's big. Compassion in relationship is big. Because one of the things that makes intimacy really difficult is not so much expressing your pain, but fully being able to accept someone else's pain, especially when you may have been the source of it. It's a very difficult thing to hear someone express to you how you have caused them pain. That's very difficult. But that is the source of compassion, to be able to fully accept your responsibility in this situation, which first requires that you just hear their pain. That's huge. That's compassion in a relationship. So the compassion just there can be, the sort of non-judgmental listening. Right? I hear you. I see you. I want the best for you. Sympathetic joy means I'm happy for your happiness, and I'm also feel pain for your pain. That's sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy and sympathetic pain, they kind of go together. And equanimity is accepting that they also have their own path, and their path is not your path. You guys can travel together, but you also have different paths. That's an important aspect of equanimity in a relationship. And at some point, their path may not include you anymore. And can you even accept that? And also that your path may not include them. Or in some areas, it does and doesn't. So that type of equanimity of acceptance. Yeah, they're different. They're different. They're really and it all comes, then it circles back to what are we, when we talk about a mindful relationship, what are we being mindful of? So we talk about these great qualities of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, sympathetic pain, and equanimity, real true acceptance. And then we're talking about also in relationship as a practice, according to Ram Dass, relationship as your practice. So what does it mean then if we're practicing mindfulness and I want to have a mindful relationship? Does it mean we meditate together? What does it mean a mindful relationship? Well, first of all, what does mindfulness mean? Mindfulness means that you're observing and being very aware of your present moment without judgment, of what's going on in your environment, in your body, and in your mind. Okay? Now, if we look at mindfulness in relationship, it's not just that I'm being aware of this person. I'm being aware of what's going on in my body and mind when I'm with that person. That's mindfulness relationship, is that I'm always having one eye on my reactions, my mind, and my emotions. So that all of a sudden I just don't find myself completely overwhelmed by the upset because I didn't see it coming. I'm maintaining presence and mindfulness of my mind when I'm with that other person. Mindful of my thoughts, my feelings, and my body. So we tend to think of mindfulness, I'm going to observe you and look at you and then maybe give you some suggestions. No. First and foremost, it's the lonely journey of yourself, even when you're with someone else. That doesn't create separation. It actually creates greater connection because you're very aware of how you are related to them. And you're noticing again the discomfort that maybe you had this thought, you had this expectation, you had this disappointment, you had this sense of being offended, you had this desire, You have all of these things going on in you, and it's in relationship to this other person. So you're observing very much your body, feelings, your body, heart, and mind in relation to this person. That's mindfulness of relationship. It's mindfulness of yourself in relationship. Now, the other thing when I mentioned that it's possible to work with all the difficulties that come up. When we talk about the Four Noble Truths, the fourth truth is the Eightfold Path, is the sort of real specific practices of working in life skillfully in order to become fully realized and to let go of all the unwholesomeness and to really invite and generate wholesomeness. Now, think of that in the context of relationship. Everything that we're doing in a normal practice of the Eightfold Path, of understanding the Four Noble Truths, of understanding the Brahma Viharas, we simply apply them to relationship. It's not some sort of, magical text you need to study to say, how can I be in relationship with practice? You have practice, you have relationship. You have work, you have practice. You have practice, you have meals. You have practice, you have going to supermarket. You have practice. Like this is your life. And then there's somebody you are relating these qualities to. So when we look at even the Eightfold Path and we talk about, okay, how do I work skillfully with a relationship in practice? How do I make relationship my practice? Well, if we look at Sila, okay, part of the Eightfold Path, and I say, okay, right speech. Wow. We could spend a month just talking about speaking well, lovingly, creating harmony, holding back speech, being mindful of speech, being mindful of attention of speech. Is it right timed? Is it, the right words? Am I right intentioned? Speech in relationship. Well, okay, that's just right speech, right? Right action. What is right action? Right action is generally when we're talking about, classically in the Eightfold Path, about the precepts, which is like not lying and not stealing and not using intoxicants and not killing and not having harmful sexuality or having really respectful intimacy. So just that sounds really appropriate for relationships. Okay, really appropriate. And then there is livelihood, at work. How am I reinforcing? How does my work life reinforce our relationship? There's lots of ways to consider that with work, but that's just with Sila. And then there's Samadhi part of the path where I say there's concentration and there's mindfulness and there's effort. Okay, wow. What kind of concentration do I have? How am I focused on this person when I'm with this person? Okay, how am I mindful of my body, speech, mind, heart when I'm with this person? Right? What kind of effort, and what is right effort? Right effort is generally understood as, encouraging wholesome thoughts to arise, helping them to stay, and discouraging unwholesome, petty and judgmental thoughts, and having them not arise. So, and if they arise, letting go of them. So that's what right effort is. Think about that in a relationship. How can I have wholesome thoughts when I'm with this person and let go of unwholesome thoughts? And what are wholesome thoughts and unwholesome thoughts? Well, that's where I need the mindfulness practice of looking at myself and looking at my feelings and my body and my mind. And that when this thought comes up in relation to this person, what does it do to my heart, to my body, to my muscles, to my breath? How much peace and content? How much balance in my feeling. So we can always bring it back to that sense of mindfulness of your experience when you're in relationship. And then, of course, the last part of the Eightfold Path is the wisdom part, which has to do with right thought and right intention. Okay. And right thought means understanding the Four Noble Truths and understanding karma. And wow, that seems really good for relationship. You know, action leads to action, to reaction. I mean, how I relate to someone, how I behave has an immediate effect when you're in a relationship. The karma, you don't have to wait very long to see the relationship of karma in relationship. You know, your actions and your speech and your thoughts, they have a real quick effect. So you can observe karma in relationship. You can understand then right understanding. Right thought means understanding the Four Noble Truths and understanding also anicca anatta dukkha, meaning there is, you know, a lot of impermanence in relationship. The person that I am, the person that she is, are changing. And you know what? Our relationship is changing. And one of the things that causes difficulty is that we don't expect the changes. We just don't. But that's going against nature. Okay, that's denying the teaching, which is not a teaching from, you know, theory. The Buddha teaches from experience. If everything changes, so do relationships. And yet, we find ourselves kind of shocked by the changes or disappointed. So understanding anicca in relationship of myself, of the other, of us, that will help accept the discomfort. And understanding the dukkha, nature of dukkha, that there is a discomfort, and understanding the non-self there. That's the third aspect of like right thought in relationship. What does this non-self mean? Well, you know, in Buddhism, they kind of divide it into three big yanas, wheels of Buddhism. There's Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana. All right? And each of them have a certain character. And Theravada often is working with, you know, meditation and behavior in order to purify the mind so that you are really in a wholesome place and letting go of a lot of the hindrances and obstacles so that you can have clarity and, you know, good intentions. And so it's a very, you know, clear working on your mind. Mahayana teaches a lot about emptiness. And so the focus then is very much on emptiness and understanding the emptiness of self and the non-separation of self and other. All right. So when we talk about anatta, of non-self, then Mahayana teaching can help with that. And yet it sounds very abstract. You see, there's something very concrete and helpful in the Theravada teachings of going through the Eightfold Path and saying, you know, we've got a lot of crap to let go of, and we're going to do that and be really, you know, fully engaged and realized here. The Mahayana emptiness, the emphasis on emptiness, can be somewhat, you know, abstract and theoretical until you consider that my sense of self when I'm in a relationship is very much connected to that other person. So it's kind of like emptiness in motion. This is what I'm saying, is that it's not so abstract when you're in a relationship. Relationship is a way of concretizing and really realizing emptiness, because who you are now has like expanded and it includes this other person, and you affect each other and you adapt and you change each other just by being in each other's lives. So my definition of who I am is, you know, in this process of change because of this other person. It's actually helping you in a very real way, day by day, moment by moment, realize emptiness, meaning that you are not self-defined, you are not independent, you are interdependent. You're interdependent. So all of a sudden being in a relationship means you're affecting each other really, really immediately, right? So it's kind of a very intimate way of understanding emptiness. And Vajrayana, like with the sort of Tantra and Tibetan Buddhism, is a way of trying to take very difficult energies like sexuality and desire and transform them into enlightenment. Now, I think that's kind of risky to say, but what we can understand from this is that, from Vajrayana, is that desire and passion are not your enemies. They are not the obstacle here. Attachment to desire and attachment to passion and sexual desire is a physical and chemical and mental and emotional kind of experience, phenomenon. Now, your relationship to that phenomenon can be problematic. The phenomenon itself of having a body and then having sexuality and desire, that's just what it is to be alive. I get hungry. What am I gonna, consider that a failing of my practice because I actually am hungry and thirsty? So if you have sexual desire because you are in this body and you're in a relationship, is that the enemy and the problem stopping you from having peace of mind? Okay, it's kind of like the difference between neediness and need, right? If your sense of self is based on this phenomena, it will probably cause some, disappointing results. Now, what is your relationship to sexual energy and passion and desire? Is there attachment? Is there non-attachment? Can you have non-attachment with sexuality? Does that mean you're not involved in it? Well, then we come back to the sense of what are our intentions? Are they wholesome? Are the intentions one of a loving kindness and compassion? Sympathetic joy. Is the other person enjoying as I am? So we see that the qualities that we want of an enlightened kind of life can become also translated to an enlightened relationship. It's possible to have an enlightened or an awakened relationship by bringing these qualities into all the parts of it, including into sexuality. And that's what Vajrayana offer us in terms of understanding this. Something else. Good question? No. You need to go to the higher yanas. Go ahead.
So, our relationship with practice, and then what you said about emptiness. Emptiness is kind of easy to understand conceptually, and to really make it part of your deeper experience. And I find it very challenging. So I was wondering if you have some concrete practice. I understand again conceptually how just through observing the relational nature of all our of this self and the aggregates, that deeper intimacy with emptiness can be really realized, but it sounds like some practice of like working with that attention in a way that's more straightforward into that nature of it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can repeat it.
Yeah. So how can we make emptiness in relationship and emptiness in life more concrete as a practice and not just as an idea and a theory, right? So how can we kind of bring it more into our daily practice to realize it, and not just as an idea? Yeah, this is kind of why we have the 3 seals, Dharma seals, which are anicca, anatta, and dukkha. So when we want to understand emptiness, emptiness is another word for non-self. Okay, non-self and emptiness are real, like 2 sides of the same coin. All right. So asking about emptiness is kind of like asking about non-self. And if we want to understand emptiness or non-self, then really the clearest way to do that is by observing impermanence. You're not going to be able to observe non-self. What am I observing? And observing emptiness is like trying to observe what? But emptiness. So, but observing impermanence and change is something that's very accessible. And so this is where we can, moment by moment, notice the change in your body, in your thoughts, in your emotions, in your mind, and how those changes are constantly in relation to other things going on outside of you. So who and what you are is always adapting and changing to what's happening. You know, you have a conversation. In the conversation, notice what's going on to your mind. You know, notice what's happening to your heartbeat, right? You wake up, you say something to somebody, or you get a phone call, or your loved one, whatever. The closer you are, the more immediate that effect will be. So by observing very closely all the subtle changes, and sometimes not subtle at all, but very, you know, big changes in your body, heart, and mind in relation to somebody else or your environment, is a way of seeing how not defined, you know, the world is defining you moment by moment. And it's not a theory. It's just simply staying on track, tracking impermanence in your life moment by moment is a way of not putting it all together all the time into me. Because me is very much about like something that's solid and unchanging. And really the Tao of relationship is noticing the change in relationship, the change in you. Whether the other person is changing, that's her path, right? But when we talk about change in relationship, you're noticing the change in yourself. And that's kind of seeing how, you know, you are not self-defined, meaning you are like empty of fixed, solid essence self. So yeah, that's kind of where I think, and then you become really familiar with impermanence in your life. And impermanence and change are, again, just two words for the same phenomenon, same life. And so you become familiar with it in such a way that that seems more real than the fixed things. You know, the change is the reality, not this illusion of solidity, right? Of solidity. You notice yourself, and sometimes you can see it longer term, like age, you know, and that's why these signs of birth, of aging, sickness, and death, what were they as signs? They were signs of impermanence, you know? And by rejecting that impermanence, then dukkha is created. So again, in a concrete way, I think it's really trying to pay as close attention as possible to the changes happening moment by moment in your body, mind, and feelings. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. How do you know when, I'm just repeating the question for our audience. Um, how do you know, that's good, laughing silently. By the way, anyone, I don't see anybody who's there, but that's okay. The question Moran asked was, how do you know when it's, when the attachment is attachment? When it's clinging, yeah. When's the relationship clinging and attached? Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that's the same question we have with anything, is how do we know that we're experiencing attachment and aversion and not sort of equanimity and loving kindness? Okay, well, this is again the mindfulness of self. What's going on in your mind and in your heart and in your body? And basically, when we experience attachment, it's accompanied by negative experience. Meaning, what kind of negative experience? Usually you start to have physiological changes, like you get tense, you may breathe faster, your heart may beat faster. So there's physiological things, but there's also the psychological and mental and emotional stuff going on of feeling some negative feelings. I mean, what does attachment bring up? Usually it brings up, oh, there may be passion and love, but there's also under the surface kind of some anxiety and fear, right? No. Mm-hmm. Non-attachment? Mm. Okay. Mm. Yeah. Okay.
So how do I know when I'm dealing with past trauma? How do I know when I'm feeling like I'm just genuinely attached to this person's relationship? And like how can I differentiate and like do intelligent work?
Yeah. 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 Okay, good. So, one thing I want to emphasize is that when we're talking about relationship as practice, it doesn't mean because we're starting to consider it that all of a sudden I'm now not attached in my relationship. It just means that I'm considering it as a possibility, right? That I'm starting to work towards a more wholesome and healthy way of relating to this person, which until I finally get to full enlightenment is still going to have some attachment there. Like, don't think because now I'm like involved in practice, now my relationship is going to be like, loving and non-attached. Yeah, okay, that's a Buddha relationship. Buddha in relationship is loving and non-attached. But until we get there, we've really purified our hearts and minds and transformed our energies into really enlightened awareness. Until we've gotten there, we're still going to be mixed up with some wisdom and, selfishness and attachment. First of all, just to accept that that's there, okay? That the attachment is going to be there on different levels. But how do I know that it's not, well, it actually doesn't matter so much where it's coming from. This is what I want to say. It doesn't matter whether it's actually I'm attached from this, or I'm fearful from this, or I'm fearful from another relationship and I'm projecting onto this, or I've got some things in my past that I'm carrying with me that I haven't healed. And, I'm always living this. This is where, in the beginning, before you can accept the other person, you actually need to accept yourself as also having that stuff. You have stuff and he or she has stuff. That's what it means to be a person and vulnerable. You need to be vulnerable and intimate with, to be like, I've got this, I'm carrying around this baggage. Like, okay. And part of my journey is to lighten the load and let go of some of this baggage. But right now, this is what I'm carrying. So by accepting it in yourself, that this is part of, what I'm dealing with right now, not who I am, it's part of what I'm dealing with. Okay, you can start exposing that and invite some vulnerability and intimacy, okay, by being able to express that. In the same way you want someone to express what they're carrying with you. So you need to be open and honest. I don't mean with the person, honest with yourself, that this is what I have. Yeah. Yeah. He's got his own journey, and it may not be parallel to yours in the same time, you know? Yeah. Yeah. So this is where there's these 3 levels of trust that I wanted to mention. Okay. And this was the last thing I wanted to mention, was about trust in relationship. And trust, we're talking about there's like normal trust, but this is the practice trust. Okay. And the practice trust means, first of all, you're trusting yourself. Okay. And what that trust, that with all of what you've gone through and all that you're carrying, you can still be in a loving, open, intimate, and vulnerable place. You know, that you can still, you have love to give, and it's real love. It's not just neediness. It's real love. Okay. So you can trust that with everything you have more. Right? That's number 1 trust. The other trust is trust in the other, that with everything he has more. You know? So whatever they've gone through and whatever they're carrying, they also have the wisdom and awareness to transcend that. They may not even know that right now, but you can trust that. The other trust level, the third one, is the trust in the relationship. That this relationship will, help you manifest that great love and those qualities, those enlightened qualities. And the trust in the second level of trust and the first level, okay, have to come before the third level of trust. Now, the first 2 levels of trust in yourself and in the other, you may come to the realization that I really trust that you can become fully realized and a fully loving person, but it may not be with me. That also can be a trust that you can realize. And you can also trust yourself that I have it in me to be fully realized and fully loving, but it may not be right now with this. No? That doesn't mean you can't love. It means that I have full trust, but I don't have necessarily the third level of trust, which is the trust in the relationship, to awaken this greatness. And it's not saying that he can't do it. It's not saying that you can't do it. It's just saying that perhaps the third level may not fully realize this, may not be the, what's needed to awaken those 2 levels of trust. But first, you've got to, establish and fully firmly establish that trust in yourself. Everybody's wounded and carrying a lot of crap. Some more than others, and whatever karma we have, this is the karma we have. And each person's karma and their burden is unique. And with all that, awakening and fully establishing a sense of confidence in your own ability to be real, loving, and vulnerable in the world with somebody. So I think that's number 1. That's what you start with. Until you establish that trust on some level, it's kind of hard to then, do that. You had a question.
Is that I'm kind of struggling with meeting up expectations because I'm trying to walk this path and conduct myself according to the teaching. So like with compassion, loving kindness, and I feel like I'm almost worried like I'll be taken advantage of, where someone is enjoying those qualities and my efforts like space and being passionate about, but then they'll reciprocate. And then I don't know how to communicate that without basically, so let me tell you about the teachings. Because how do you express to someone, oh, I'd like to be treated with compassion in this interaction, if they're not if they're not in like, if they're not going through the teachings and don't really have a concept of compassion. You know what I mean? Like, how do you mitigate that? How do you communicate that to someone who's not necessarily
Yeah. Yeah. So I think some of the qualities here, yeah, I wouldn't talk about, I mean, again, being in a spiritual relationship doesn't mean you each have your own, the same sort of specific practice. Like that for sure not. Um, it, but the certain qualities that we can share, I think are, we can consider human qualities. I wouldn't call them Buddhist qualities. I wouldn't call unconditional love a Buddhist quality. Then so the world would be in trouble. There'd be so few people with unconditional love, but there really are quite a few who are maybe not realizing it fully, but see it as a value. And having compassion for pain, that's the basis of all work in the world. You know, anyone who is trying to help, who recognizes that there's like a situation that needs help, because you see the pain. Um, being happy for the person's success and joy, that's also really human. Is he happy for you even when it doesn't relate to him? You know, uh, can you share something and you know that, and will you? Can he call you and you'll be happy for him even though like it had nothing to do with you? So that's sympathetic joy, sympathy, and then equanimity. Do we accept each other? Do we accept each other? So that acceptance and love without, look, when you start and you express needs, expressing needs doesn't mean love is conditional. Okay, that we should differentiate. Expressing needs doesn't mean love is conditional, because love, when it gets to love, then it's big. Okay, love is bigger than needs. All right, what is love? I don't know, but we can say that in Buddhism, the simple definition of love is that I really, really want you to be fully happy and realized. I want you to be happy. I want you to feel spacious and free and fulfilled in life. Yeah, that's something that probably, if we're loving somebody, we want for them. And so I don't see those as, I see those as worthwhile sharing. I really want you to be happy, and I hope you want me to be happy. I want you to share your pain, and I want to be there for it, and I want to be able to share my pain. And I hope you can be there for me. I want to share your joy. Tell me when you're happy, and I want you to share my joy too. Okay, and I want to accept you as you are, and I want you to accept me as I am.
Not common in our society, of what you're mentioning.
So I want to argue something. I want to maybe if for all the I'm married, I have 2 kids. So everything that you said, I think is on the money. In practicing, like you're in a relationship. I think that if you're still single, slash, you don't have kids with your partner, and you're lucky to walk on the path and meet the Dhamma before you have kids, before you're involved in a way which makes it more difficult to change it. Like I said last time, I think you're in such a privileged place that you can actually make different choices. So I would say something that I think that you won't say. I'll be more controversial. If you're dating someone and he's not willing to come to Dhamma meetings, maybe he's not just not the right simple. This is the way things are. I'm walking on the path. Either you want, so, what's the point in trying, like walking on the path? Like trying to like pull him into your path. It's like
because that's your path.
no.
But it's not the same path. That's the point. It's just not the same
So
path.
maybe you don't have to be with it.
Yeah, but most of
We're limiting ourselves to anything Buddhists in Israel. We are really
No. It's not
not encouraging.
It's always. I met the Dhamma after I had kids. I'm just sharing my experience. There's a great chance that I'm sharing something that is very intimate. There's a great chance I would change. I would make different choices if I would have started the past before. And I think I even my partner know that. But now this is it, and I'm happy, and I'm struggling, and I'm working with it. But I think that if you don't have to meditate in the middle of the market. It's like it's stupid. If you want to meditate, if you want to meditate, go. Buddha said in the script that there's enough hills and trees and empty cabins. Just like go and meditate. You don't have to go to the noisiest place. So just maybe if you just started seeing someone and bring him to either he gets it or he doesn't get it. It can be a great catalyst. It can be a great catalyst if it will work or not. If he gets it or you don't get it. Very simple.
Yeah, but it's like two different worlds.
Okay.
It's a whole different mentality.
Okay. Good luck. It'll be very, very difficult. It'll be very difficult.
I think there was something Daniel said last week that like really struck a chord with me. That you said that the Dhamma has many expressions. That like a little someone is like 1,000 hands. So there's 1,000 ways that the Dhamma can come about. The Buddhist Dhamma is one expression of the Dhamma. And that you said when you're looking for a partner, they should practice the Dhamma, not necessarily mean the Buddhist Dharma, but a Dharma, a path of easy suffering, of compassion.
Mhm.
Try
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think that really struck a chord with me and really kind of clicked in my head that okay, maybe they're not going to walk this specific path, but walk a path and be aware in some way. So maybe that's kind of a compromise between what you're both saying, like
A path.
Yeah. I would also include that they are supportive and encouraging of your choices in a path of perfection. So, in a path, a bodhisattva path of trying to make the world a better place and to perfect yourself. Yeah, I think the Buddha Dharma is really great for that. But I think other people will find other ways. And yet, if they are really happy with you, this is the sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is really like a hard thing to understand. Because can you be really happy for someone who's making a choice that you would not make? Right? So,
The point is, what we're doing here, what we're trying to do here, is a practice that almost no one does. Okay? Like comparing to, the population of, I don't know, this country or whatever modern country, like, I don't know how you say it, like
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm talking about a mentality, like values. Yes, most of the people, they don't practice it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you got no one to practice it with. And I'm talking from my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like people nobody teaches us how to love, how to respect one another, how to give space to one another.
I think that's what I was saying, that I was finding it difficult to like mitigate.
I know. I listened to you exactly.
When
That's
it's not
what you're
part
saying.
of modern culture,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of going, well, how am I just going to teach this person about compassion now? Like,
Yeah.
how does that work? You know?
Yeah.
And it is.
It's pretty rare. It's pretty rare to find.
Yeah.
That was the point
Mm.
that everyone was trying to make.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I think being somebody who is trying to live any type of spiritual path in a really real way and not just a formal way is
We're
rare.
not talking about formal.
Yeah.
We're talking about values.
Yeah.
It's the same values.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the opposite of the values, the common values in our society. That's what I feel. Sorry? It's hard work. It's like most of the people don't speak that language. I'm not talking about Dhamma, I'm not talking about this specific path, I'm talking about the values, the art of loving, the art of respecting.
Yeah, so we need to seek out communities that support that more, and you're probably not going to find it in, like, I don't know, just an urban environment where everyone's working. It's true. You have to find your micro communities within that. Yeah. 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 And I think you have to also trust. I think there's trust too. This is a big aspect, that there's trust that, you know, your path will lead you and you will lead it to where you need to go. So there's a type of trust in your path, that you have the wisdom to deal with the obstacles. That's the trust. Okay. It's not that you're necessarily going to avoid the obstacles, but you will meet the obstacles that you are able to deal with.
I think there is also, okay, I will unmute myself, so I will unmute myself, so I will not need to write it. I think there is also an aspect of כנות, כי יש בית של יושר וכנות. אני זוכר, נגיד, אני לפני שהתחלתי לצאת עם עדי, אז זה היה לי באמת איזו כוונת לב מאוד רצינית שאני מחפש זוגיות אמיתית. ואז כשהייתי רואה בנות, ומאוד אתה יכול לשקר לעצמך, כי אתה רוצה סתם לצאת ולבלות, ואני חושב שיש איזה משהו, ואני מסכים איתכם, זה לפעמים מאוד מתחבר לזה, כי זה נדיר למצוא מישהו שום, אז אנחנו גם צריכים מאוד להיות ישרים עם עצמנו, גם לדעת מה הכוונות שלנו שאנחנו נפגשים עם אנשים, וגם נגיד לא לטאטא דברים מתחת לשטיח, שנגיד אתה רואה, אני אתן פרספקטיבה גברית, כי זה מה שאני מכיר, מישהי שנגיד נראית טוב, אבל אתה יודע שאתם לא בדיוק, אתה כאילו תזרום, אבל אתה לא אומר את זה לעצמך, אז אתה כזה, לא, יכול להיות שזה יסתדר אחר כך, אבל לא, בפועל אתה יודע שלמה נכנסתם לזה, אתה יודע, אני צוחק, אבל זה אמיתי לגמרי, עכשיו, זה יכול להשאיר אנשים, כאילו, lifetimes נראה לי, ועוד יותר גרוע, אם אתה מתחת לשטיח מטאטא ועוד נכנס אחר כך למשהו רציני, אז אני אומר, ואני חושב שזה אותו דבר לשני הכיוונים, אני חושב שגם נשים יש להם, הן מאוד רוצות שהוא יהיה מאוד הגבר המושלם, אבל הן יודעות שהוא לא, אני חושב שיש פה איזה עניין של כנות שהוא, סתם, לא יודע, זה עלה לי אולי לשתף את זה.
מה שרציתי להגיד, יש כנות בהנחיה. אני חושב ההנחה היא, הרבה בשיחה הזאת הייתה איזושהי הנחה שאנחנו בסדר, זה ממש לא. ההנחה היא שהולכים ועובדים. תקשיבי שנייה. אבל תקשיבי באמת.
אנשים לא מושלמים, וזה בסדר.
אבל תקשיבי שנייה, אולי אני אוכל לתת משהו שיעזור לך. אולי אני אתן לך, אולי, כי אני הרי גבר. אולי. דברים הרי... לא, אולי במקרה. תקשיבי, אני הבנתי בדיוק מה את אומרת. הבנתי. דברים יצאו למלחמה בשביל נשים. יצאו דברים כל כך קשים בשביל נשים, תאמיני לי, שלבוא לשיעורי דמה, ללכת בדרך רוחנית, שיש סיכוי שתעבור אותך לאדם יותר טוב, זה הדבר. ברור שזה לא קל. חיילות מתנה. אני אומר לך.
אבל אף אחד לא ביקש מהם לבוא לשיעורי דמה.
תבקשי,
יש שאלה מהקהל הזה. Alice is asking, can spiritual compatibility between couple help to stop their relationship breaking down?
Can spiritual compatibility
Between
a
couple.
couple help stop their relationship from breaking down?
Well, yeah, I mean, that almost seems obvious, I would think, because, sorry.
You have reference points to help you. That's what's going to help you, is that you have you already have points of reference that can help you through the maze. Without a shared spiritual vocabulary, then you have to reach out and find terms that you can share. So yeah, I mean, to agree with finding someone who shares the Dharma is that you have a shared vocabulary, so you don't have to always be translating, either terms. Okay, that just means otherwise maybe it takes more effort. You have to translate more. But if you already have something shared, yeah, you have points of reference. Does it make it, foolproof? No. Right? It depends how seriously you take it. And there can also be that not the third level of trust in the relationship. So that is just this is not going to happen.
Someone, and then they respect you enough not cause you pain. You respect each other, but they respect you to respect the path you're walking on. They respect the relationship enough to communicate. Right? And translating if needed. Just find someone who has enough respect for you to remove themselves from their point of view. They can say and see things from your point of view, which I think that's what a lot of people struggle with right now. Finding is just the ability of empathy. We are in such an individualistic, centric society, I think. So it's whether or not they're walking your path or studying or teaching or teaching. As long as they're respectful and loving. I think, personally.
One of the things, I want to add is that, when we're talking about being mindful of ourselves in relationship, if you're not in an intimate relationship, or even if you are, you can start this practice by being mindful with friendships. So you don't immediately have to go to, say, an intimate romantic relationship, but you can start to see how these qualities, including respect and loving kindness, compassion, all these things in the Eightfold Path, how they are manifested also in other types of relationships. So even if you're not in a romantic one, you can see how they are manifesting or not in your friendships, perhaps. And then that can be a sort of a testing ground for you being able to express those qualities, so that you start to, express them more in your life with your friends. So it's not just about having your intimate partner as the practice partner, but what kind of friendships do you have? Are you able to share your practice, whatever it is, with your friends, or if not your practice, those qualities. So I think we can look at it without first going right into romance. We can also start testing the waters of relationship practice with friends as well. And that may take a bit of pressure off needing to find the one who's like in this room. But seeing it like with your friends as well, that's what I would recommend as a starting practice with a relationship, because we're always in relationships. I mean, are you able to have a practice relationship with your manager, or with your subordinate, or or with somebody who's just like in a service job? I mean, so we're in a world of relationships. How are they expressing, and how are we expressing our practice in those relationships? And then I think the more we explore that, the more likely we'll bring it into some intimacy as well. So maybe step back from the pressure of needing to put it into intimacy, and maybe just exploring in our life of relationships, how we're bringing it in with those relationships that are not necessarily Sangha, like Buddha Sangha. So that's maybe initial steps to consider. Yeah, please.
There is for me like a paradox. If I implement all that you said, then the relationship will be better, and the risk of attachment to the other relationship gets bigger. Not to copy, I'm not talking about the cadence. Is there a way to relieve this paradox?
You mean I'm attached to the relationship getting better, so I want to practice all this?
Implement all that you said in this.
Yeah.
Meeting, and my relationship is better. I appreciate them more. I'm attached to them.
Yeah. But I think if we're developing these qualities, if the relationship is improving, part of the thing that allows it to improve is more non-attachment. Non-attachment doesn't mean that the relationship is now stronger, so I have more to be attached to, right? It actually, I mean, what allows these qualities is that I'm seeing the person as like, something that I'm giving, not only something I'm receiving from. So the direction shifts, that it's more like, this is an opportunity for me to give more, not necessarily to receive more. So if that's the direction, then it's less about, there's actually less for me to be attached to, because remember, attachment has to do with you, not with them, right? So attachment is what you work on yourself. It's not what you're working on with them.
Hopefully, partner will not be disturbed with the area of non-attachment. Because women can feel this better than men. It's just it's discussed a lot. Right, partner.
Okay, I think I think it's good for tonight. So I want to take 3 breaths. So